They celebrate trade promotion organizations that excel in innovative and effective practices in export development initiatives, having fulfilled the requirements in helping micro, small, and medium enterprises become competitive in international markets. The awards jury is comprised of senior TPO representatives from the 2016 award winners and is chaired by ITC Executive Director Arancha Gonzalez. Commenting on this year's shortlist, Ms. Gonzalez said institutions play a crucial role in supporting business innovation, trade-led growth, and the internationalization of MSMEs. The WTPO awards aim to provoke new thinking and provide a platform to share practices that work. And that's it on the business news. The program continues in just a moment. Do stay with us. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much, Chimaobi, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers in our review segment.
And as always, to give more insight into our review this morning is our regular newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Ruda. How was your weekend?
Awesome, awesome.
Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
I hope you had a great weekend.
Yes, very restful.
And you were following the political issues.
Certainly. Well, very interesting.
All right. Well, of course, the papers this morning are awash, you know. The lead stories this morning are awash with the primaries, the just concluded primaries. And today is actually, yesterday was the last day.
Well, they have a deadline to submit the names. Well, by yesterday, they had to conclude the primaries by yesterday. That was October 7th. Okay. That's correct, yes.
All right. Let's begin with the Daily Trust this morning. On the Daily Trust, we'll begin with the lead story. It says how Atiku emerged as Buhari's main challenger. Tambuwa Saraki Kwankwaso Dankwambu set for Plan B. That's the lead story for the Daily Trust this morning. And on the Nigerian pilot, it says it's Buhari versus Atiku. As 7,000 delegates affirm Buhari's candidature, Atiku clinches PDP's ticket with 1,532 votes. Jonathan Saraki Wiki, others congratulate Atiku. PDP rewards top aspirants with automatic ticket. That's also the lead stories for the Nigerian pilot this morning. Kingsley, what stories?
Well, there's a lead for the Punch as well. That's stories arising from the presidential primaries as well as the Authority newspaper. The Punch captures it this way. Presidential ticket, that's the kicker. Atiku begins search for running mate. I'm talking about the Punch newspaper and not the Authority right now. That's where I'm reading the headline from. And it says presidential ticket. Presidential ticket. Atiku begins search for running mate. With two riders, these are other candidates now who have also thrown their hats into the ring. Obi Ezekwesili, Donald Duke, and Major Al-Mustafa join race. We're ready for 2019 polls, Oshamole tells opposition. Now, take a look at the two photographs on the front page of the Punch newspaper, and you can see the photographs out of the conventions of the two major political parties, President Buhari and APC on the left, and Atiku Abubakar and the other contestants at the Port Harcourt convention of the PDP. Now, back to the Authority newspaper. That's the lead story. As I said, that also has a kicker. 2019 presidency. It's Buhari versus Atiku. And you have a rider there, one of several other riders, as IBB, Saraki, Dakwambo, ZLP, drum support for PDP candidate. And of course, there are other stories. We'll come to those stories in the meantime. But Abaya, just before we come to you, let's take a look at some of the stories above the nameplate of the Authority newspaper. APC primaries. Accept defeat like Ambode, Buhari admonishes angry losers. That's on page 3. Osun governorship. Police renew invitation to Melaye and Bruce over protest. And then right at the edge there on page 12, that's the promo for the story in greater detail on page 12. 2019, Atiku's emergence means ego versus Eagle, says Tunde Bakari. Bayo?
Yes. Well, political parties have been rounding off. They had to round off their primaries because the deadline for primaries was 7th of October. The All Progressive Congress convention at Abuja was to confirm the direct primaries held in the state. 14,842,072 votes were confirmed for President Muhammadu Buhari from across the state. And as required by the APC constitution, the affirmation was done at the convention and confirmed the candidature. At Port Harcourt, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar overwhelmed 11 others aspirants by pulling 1,532 votes. In fact, the next one that came in Koto after him had 693 votes. Other presidential candidates have also evolved. I'm surprised that some people are tagging it as Atiku versus Buhari. As at the last count, there are about 12 presidential candidates that have emerged. You have the new Nigerian People's Party. Their candidate is Prince Ikeke. He's the presidential candidate. Accord Party has Isaac Babatunde Ushitelu. Allied Congress Party of Nigeria has Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. Advanced Nigerian Democratic Party has Alhaji Issa Bashir. All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, has Major General John Bo. Zenith Labour Party has Dr. Olusegun Mimiko. People's Coalition Party has Dr. Nicholas Felix. People's Party of Nigeria has Major Hamza Al-Mustafa. Social Democratic Party has former Governor of Cross River State, Donald Duke, while African Democratic Congress has Dr. Obeid Melafia. There are several others more, so you know the list of political parties
Well,
as at the last
96.
count. 96. So before submission now, between now.
96 political party. I thought 91, unless they had registered some
No,
new.
96.
Oh, 96 now.
Last count.
All right,
Yes.
probably they'll take it to 100 just before the election. That's if they beat the deadline. Bayo, let's take a look at some point that I raised while Rhoda and I were introducing the program today. The amount of time spent in conducting the primaries, it seems wasteful. They have to...
Hours?
Yes, the political parties will have to find ways of introducing technology into it. All these ones of carrying ballot paper as if you are doing the Florida ballot recount that happened in 2000 between Al Gore and ultimate President Bush the son. We have to find a better way of conducting this, because it's not just the delegates who are there. You have the security agencies, who are also present. If you multiply the man hours that they burnt, 36 hours or more, just to supervise a process that if they were punching, something would be a lot easier. We had on Good Morning Nigeria in our conversation segment, sometime in the past, an official from NITDA who indicated that they seem not to have been consulted, even by INEC, in designing some critical aspects of their software. And you have software engineers in the various universities and institutes around the country. You consult them, let them design a system for Nigeria. It's not everything so you want to go abroad. If we have an indigenous challenge or a need, then you consult them and you pay for it.
That is the essence of technology. Use technology to solve your immediate problems. And then look within your environment. Look for experts to design specific technology to tackle your problems. Man hours that have been lost is very worrying. And we seem not to even take cognizance of it. Look at the issue of minimum wage, for instance. We just shut down the economy for a number of days. And you know the quantum of loss that the economy suffers when you shut down the whole of the economy.
Right. All right, very quickly, let's take a look at some other stories on the Nigerian pilots. We have just above the name, below the nameplate, it says Shehu Sani remains Kaduna Central senatorial candidate for APC. And expedite prosecution of indicted past governor, Serap tells Buhari. That's a story that's, both stories are trending on page 7 of the Nigerian pilot. Let's quickly go down to the foot of the paper. It says 2019 election will be won on issues, says Oshomole. That's the Nigerian pilot, the foot of the paper. It says 2019 election will be won on issues. And NAV to acquire JF-17 multi-role fighter aircraft from Pakistan. Akeredolu commiserates with family of murdered teenage model. And APC primaries emulate Ambode. Buhari urges losers. And Atiku seeks Obasanjo's support in veiled comments. Let's go now to the Daily Trust. Let's see. Let's go to the future of the paper on the Daily Trust. It says 8 South African police officers in court over murder of Nigerian. And that's on page 7. And of course, the other stories we've read earlier, Obieze, Chrisley and others get presidential tickets. Finally, funding gap for federal government's budget widens as revenues fall short. So that's a story. That's a business story. That's on page 17.
All right. Let's return to the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper, above the nameplate, says human rights violation getting worse in Nigeria and others. That's according to civil society organizations. Details of that can be found on page 44. President denies asking El-Rufai, that's the governor of Kaduna State, to initiate Shehu Sani's recall from Senate. Details of that can be found on page 10. Now, 2 earpieces beside the nameplate there. You have that headline. It says Nigerians transfer 216 billion naira via mobile devices in 9 months. Autumn hails 2006 rescuer of military plane crash survivors. That's on page 11. And then right at the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, UNDP, that's the United Nations Development Program, ranks Sokoto and Katsina and Bauchi lowest in Human Development Index. Sokoto, Katsina and Bauchi lowest in Human Development Index, page 34. Navy shuts illegal maritime academy, arrests proprietors and teachers. Restructuring should be precondition for electing next president. That's according to Tunde Bakare. Details on page 11. Bio.
Well, this story you read about what is happening in Kaduna are part of the fallout from the primaries. Another fallout is the report that the wife of the president, Aisha Buhari, has tweeted on lamenting about automatic ticket granted some political office aspirants, saying that they are denying that. She says that the implication of that persons purchase forms got screened and then they were also cleared for primaries only to be stopped from contesting. She says that she is particularly worried that the change mantra of the party, and particularly by the labor leader who should speak for the masses, seems to have been compromised.
Actually, there are a lot of controversies about that. I don't think that statement has been verified by the office of the First Lady. It's been trending since yesterday, no doubt about that. But then there has not been any official statement to say that she actually posted that message.
There was a headline I read from the Punch newspaper, and the story was all over at the weekend on the social media about Autumn hailing the 2006 rescue of a military plane crash that occurred in 2006. This was in Benue. It occurred in Kwande local government area. A number of generals, unfortunately, lost their lives in that crash. They were on a flight to Obudu Cattle Ranch, where they were going to have a retreat. And there was this young boy who was 14 years at the time. He was the one who ultimately located the wreckage of the crash and mobilized some other young persons to help rescue those who were still alive. When the incident occurred, the young man, of course, it became the toast, of all and sundry. And the then Chief of Army Staff, General Azazi, had asked the young man what he would like to become. He had said that, of course, he would like to become a soldier. Unfortunately, General Azazi himself died in a helicopter crash in Port Harcourt in December 2012. Well, the young man...
Patrick Yakowa, the same aircraft.
Patrick Yakowa, who was then governor of Kaduna State. Yes. The young man, of course, eventually enrolled into the Nigerian Defense Academy. And he was one of those who got commissioned at the weekend, so he's now a second lieutenant. Oh, yes, so congratulations to him, and we wish him the best in his military career.
There was this other story about 8 police officers that have been arrested. They were arrested on Friday for arresting, torturing, and suffocating a Nigerian. And the Nigerian consul in Johannesburg, Godwin Adama, says that this will set a new standard for prosecution. Particularly, you'll recall there are several instances of Nigerians being killed either by some South African citizens or sometimes by the police itself, and nothing seemed to have been done about it. You'll recall also that the Office of the Foreign Affairs Minister had taken this up as a matter of concern by the Nigerian administration.
All right, Bayo, editorial this morning...
The hope is, yes, Bayo, what the point Bayo just made about the arrest of the South African police officers. It is significant,
yes,
no doubt about that. But we do hope that there indeed will be diligent prosecution of these officers, because the rate and intensity of police brutality, South African police brutality against Nigerians, you know, it's virtually unheard of anywhere else on the African continent. Quite aside from the xenophobic attacks that Nigerians and indeed other Africans come under from South Africans, misguided as they were. But in this case, the police officers who've been arrested, we do hope that there will be diligent prosecution and appropriate sanctions meted out if they are
yes,
found.
Yes, it is by what they call a special independent police investigation department. It is a department that is separate from the police itself. And when issues are raised about the integrity of the police, it becomes their duty to go into it. So let's hope that justice, the cause of justice will be served. Editorial you were talking about.
Yes, editorial this morning is on the New Telegraph. Very quickly, let's take a look at that. It's basically, very quickly, it's basically on the state of roads in Nigeria. It's referring to the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja, Kogi, Benin, Expressway, and the state on which it is right now. Well,
in fact, like you mentioned, several routes have been mentioned, including Benin, Okene, Okwila. There's also Jebba Mokwa. There is also Umuahia, Kotakwene, and several others. But the roads generally fall into two categories. There are those that come under the auspices of the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, FERMA, which is just maintenance to make sure that the roads are motorable. There are others that have been abandoned for a long time that require massive construction. And the editorial is pointing out that the rainy season is not helping the construction matters. And you will recall that in the past 2 years, many contractors that had abandoned road construction sites because of one challenge, either related to payment, had to be mobilized, and many of them have gone on site. And of recent, the Minister of Works, Power and Housing had indicated that there is massive construction going around the nation, along several roads. This is very important because if foodstuffs and economic activity have to improve, we require road infrastructure to move them, particularly that our economy depends seriously on roads, and the state of the roads in Nigeria, many of them have been very, very deplorable. What they can do is to speed up the construction. Particularly, we had the challenges of flood this year, and it is not helping the road construction. But the contractors have returned to site, and we hope that the situation will improve.
All right, thank you very much, Bayo, for joining us this morning. Hopefully, we'll see you again tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA this morning. Our focus is on the just concluded political parties' primaries. It's less than 24 hours that the parties concluded their primaries. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at these issues arising from the primaries and, of course, the issues of internal democracy in political parties. But we'll take the short break and we'll be back in just a moment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
To the outer framers, the hat tippers, the fringe goers, you don't need to hide anymore. Try Dettol Even Tone. It cleans and helps to reduce the appearance of blemishes caused by oil, dirt and germs, giving your skin a healthy feel for an even better you. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capsule for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol Antiseptic Liquid in Sachet for only 40 naira.
Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put
you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
How they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and as always, we are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, in line with the timetable released earlier in the year by the Independent National Electoral Commission, political parties that are interested in contesting next year's general elections were required to conclude their primaries for the nomination of their candidates by October the 7th, that is yesterday, Sunday. And indeed, that's part of what we've been discussing in the stories and the papers, as well as the introduction to this program. The primaries have, of course, been concluded for various elective offices, that's to say at the state level as well as the national level, other than the local government, which elections are usually conducted by the state independent electoral commissions. But the primaries have not been without their controversies and indeed some interesting moments. We have guests with us in the studios now to discuss these issues in greater detail.
And just to also indicate also, Kingsley, that you said earlier, it's 91 political parties, not 96. Just for the record, 91 political parties, not 96. All right, we're being joined in the studio to discuss this subject matter by Professor Antonia Taye Okosi Simbine. She's a National Commissioner, North Central, Kaduna, Niger Plateau, FCT, in charge of election and political party monitoring. Professor Antonia Simbine, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
We also have joining us here in the studio Abubakar Umar Kari. He is a lecturer and a public affairs analyst at the University of Abuja. Good morning, Doctor, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, we have with us Mike Utsaha. Okay. He is a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, gentlemen and lady, good morning and welcome once again.
All right, let's begin with the INEC commissioner, because usually there's a requirement for INEC to monitor the primaries of the parties or the conventions of the parties. What is it that INEC has found out with regard to the conduct of the primaries?
Well, essentially, we have received late notices, changes to notices, sudden changes to notices. Sometimes it's at the date, sometimes it's about the venues. But notices were received late, and because of these changes, you had a situation where up till yesterday, 19 political parties were still trying to conclude their primaries. The primaries have also gone, in a way, rather chaotic most of the time. But by and large, most of them, I say they were concluded. They managed to conclude by the timeline yesterday.
Were they conducted according to the provisions of INEC?
Well, INEC doesn't have provisions for them as such. Okay. They individually have their constitutions and guidelines that they are supposed to go by. And what INEC does is to try to observe that there's substantial compliance with the provisions of their own law. The truth is that these activities are supposed to be their show. It's about them. So whatever they said they are going to do, we try to ensure that they are going by the rules of their own game.
No, not by the Electoral Act. Are there no Electoral Acts guiding
there are guidelines, general guidelines in terms of where an activity can take place or not take place, by when an activity should take place, okay? And then these are general things that the party has to ensure that it does. Even the processes, whether you are using direct or indirect primaries and all of that. But in terms of the procedure for the day, these are rules set down by the parties themselves, which the Commission tries to ensure that they go by.
Well, still focused on INEC as well as the primaries. There's a requirement for INEC to observe the primaries. And you have also indicated that in some instances the primaries seem somewhat chaotic with frequent changes of date and time and venue. Ultimately, was INEC able to deploy its resources to observe and monitor these primaries?
Yeah, certainly we were. This is an activity we have always engaged in, so it's an activity that was planned for. And that's why there was a period for this process, and men and materials were also equally deployed. As we got the notices, we had the charts for each of the parties, and we put staff who were going to do this monitoring. If they are taking place at the state level, a few headquarters staff join the local staff. That means the staff at the state level where the activity is going to be. So certainly we did plan for it, we organized for it, and we implemented the aspect that is supposed to be ours.
I'm sure our other guests will have their comments on this, but I'd like to ask you this question. When you say that INEC received notices, from whom did you receive the notice? Because there have also been various reports of so-called parallel primaries taking place, which of course adds to the intensity of the chaotic nature of some of the primaries. To which notices were you responding?
We were responding to notices from party chairmen and their secretaries. And it is from them that we will receive list of nominations. Where activities are organized and the commission is not properly informed, you will find that it is not likely that our men and materials are deployed for that purpose. But whenever we receive the notice, we receive them on time. If the activity is at the state level, we send this information down to the states.
All right, Professor Simbine, thanks a lot. Let's pause you in the meantime and bring in Dr. Abubakar Karinan. Doctor, what's your impression of the just concluded primaries of the political parties?
Well, Prof described the primary as chaotic.
In some instances.
Yeah, in some instances. But my own personal take is that in those instances, it was worse than that. I'm particularly disappointed by the total lack of organization and the seemingly contrived controversies that trailed many of such primaries, particularly in the major parties. They succeeded in willfully and deliberately violating their own laws. They deliberately organized shoddy events. There were parallel congresses and primaries in many states at several levels. And I know for certain that in many states, the officials that were sent to conduct the primaries either decided to go there very late, sometime as late as 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., and then units, wards, and polling centers were deliberately starved of the necessary electoral materials, particularly where direct primaries were done. Then the parties, particularly the ruling APC, was changing the rules of the game frequently, midway. Today is direct, tomorrow indirect. In certain instances, some governors decided to do a consensus arrangement, which is actually provided in their constitution, but in a very undemocratic way. So the entire thing, to me, on a scale, far fell short of the tenets of democracy, to say the least.
Michael Saha?
Well, I endorse the assessments that have been made by my colleagues. I can just add that this is something we've been doing for 20 years now. I think the first party primaries we had to elect candidates in the current democratic dispensation took place in Jos. I remember, in 1998, the PDP, for instance, had their convention in Jos where President Obasanjo was elected. He contested against Alex Ekweme and he lost. And if you've been doing something for 20 years, we can excuse the other political parties, but for a party like the PDP that has been around for close to 20 years now, has been doing the same thing, this is probably the 5th time they're going to go into this exercise. So unexpected that it will be a lot better. Even for the APC, they have done the same thing last 4 years and they have another opportunity now. And so one expected that it will be slightly better. But having said that, I would like to commend the APC in particular. And why do I say so? I say so because the APC is beginning to tell Nigerians that, look, we can move away from this indirect primaries kind of thing that really, denies the real people, the real members of the political party, the opportunity to be part of the process of leadership recruitment. And it has tried its hands on it. I think since 1998, this is the first time we're going to have a party say that we would adopt direct primaries. And we would like to see the other political parties also try their hands out. It didn't come out as well as we expect, but at least we have tried, There is a huge issue, Kingsley, with delegate elections. I'm not quite sure we get the best of the best through delegate elections. So we should at least allow the people have a say in who becomes the candidate of a political party. And the easiest way to do so is through the direct primaries.
As compared to the last election, 2015 elections, is there any comparison in terms of the conduct of primaries as compared to this year's?
Well, we all seem to have a damning assessment of what has happened. But if I'm not mistaken, the level of violence that we saw in 2015, and, well, it's too early to talk about the cases that ended up in court and all of that, but I want to say that as bad as it is in 2018, I think there has been some level of reduction in cases of violence and, I mean, the chaos that the professor mentioned, you know. I don't have the statistics here, but watching the media, watching the television, listening to the radio and reading from the newspapers, we seem to have had a slight, if you like, a marginal reduction in the number of cases where we ended up in chaos and complete confusion.
Well, Mike, Usaha, thank you very much. I want to come back to Dr. Kari so that you make a comment on this. Direct versus indirect primaries. Some commentators have said, look, you need to have certain conditions in place before you can successfully conduct direct primaries. You have to have your register of members, a credible register of members, just like your INEC voters register, and then there's a cutoff date beyond which, you know, new members are not to be admitted. And the party itself must have the capacity to rally its members and conduct its primaries, ensuring that only its registered members participate in all of this. Have we seen the right baby steps, you know, towards successful adoption of direct primaries going forward?
Well, certainly not. Ordinarily, I should be a huge fan of direct primaries because they allow for participation. And one of the major cardinal principles of democracy is participation. Ordinary members of a political party should have a say on who becomes their candidates. But the condition present, as they say in law, were not met before these direct primaries were purportedly conducted. A register of members is very, very essential at several levels, at the ward level, at local government level, at state levels. Most of these parties, including the APC that try to experiment with the direct primary, do not have a reliable data about their members.
Are you their secretary?
Well, the thing played itself out.
Yes.
Yes, it was very, very clear because people went about printing fake membership cards, and even where the direct primaries purportedly took place, to the best of my knowledge, it was not based on any record of members. There was even confusion on whether people should produce their membership card or they should simply go and queue behind the photograph or agent of their candidate. So the entire process was not coherent, it was not well organized, and it was easily hijacked. And as I mentioned, in most places, it actually took place very late, sometime in the wee hours of the morning. So
yeah, so that could have been an endurance test.
But we are supposed to have a seamless process, a very credible and transparent exercise, and it turned out that that was not met.
Well, gentlemen, we saw cases where aspirants were disqualified from the process. Of course, I know that Professor Antonia said that, of course, they are just there to supervise them according to the laws of their parties. But really, does a party have the laws to have the powers to disqualify an aspirant? And if it does, on what basis?
Well, let's say and agree that political parties are out to get the best candidate around that will attract the votes that will lead it into office. And so if there are any issues with such a candidate or any candidate that aspires to fly the flag of a political party, the political party will be in a position to say, well, we can't take you on. And it could be on the basis of criminal records, could be on the basis of the fact that you are facing an imminent charge in court. It could be some misconduct. It could be because you have not met with one requirement or the other, or you're not just the kind of person that the political party would want to take on. Some people have aspired to be candidates of political parties without being members of the political party. It happened in 2015. We saw cases that ended up in court, and the courts were very clear that you were not a member of the political party when you contested for this election. So I think the political parties are saying, let's run away from the past. Let us avoid situations that will deny us, you know, the interest of the generality of the voting public. And these are some of the reasons why, I mean, some persons have been disqualified. But like Kingsley said earlier, I mean, like Dr. Kari said, it was a bit haphazard. So today, someone is disqualified. The next day, the person is back in the process. You know, so it's something that we can do better than we have done. I mentioned 20 years earlier, but in addition to that, technology is at our disposal, and we should, in 2018, deploy as much as possible available technology to deal with some of these things, really. It's not rocket science, really. And if it's something we've been doing for 20 years, and I say this particularly with regard to the PDP, but the other political parties also have been around, are the same people anyway, you know. So I expect that by now we would have some concrete idea of how to go when it comes to party primaries. It is something we're going to do every 4 years anyway. So why should it be such a difficult process to engage in?
I'm wondering, gentlemen, again, Professor Simbine, well, we're going to pause here. This is a matter that will come to you subsequently. We have heard about the rather chaotic way some of the political parties have gone about their primaries, with frequent changes in dates and times and so on and so forth. Plus, some of the issues arising, you know, as to which method to adopt. It's sometimes not too transparent screening of some of the aspirants. Some said that they were screened out so as to clear the deck and then leave, you know, a sole aspirant who then automatically becomes a candidate. What does all of this say about internal party cohesion and organization?
Well, it shows that we have a very long way to go. We have been drumming of this issue of internal party democracy, that we cannot have true democracy until and unless the political parties themselves operate and behave democratically. But the issue of muzzling the dissenting views, godfatherism, insisting that this is the way to go, even if it is not democratic, is still the norm in many of the political parties. And then, of course, there are also disagreements even within the major gladiators. The state branches and the NWC insisting that this is what to be done, or that, or in the PDP insisting that sitting senators and members of House of Reps must come back, even when it is very, very obvious that they are not popular in their own constituencies, and there are people who are ready to contest with them, and then disqualifying people arbitrarily in order to pave way. So all these things shows that internal party democracy is still a very, very big challenge, that the parties don't want to behave democratically. They willfully go about violating their own rules. They don't take due recourse to their own constitutions and their own norms, and they don't seem to care about the tenets of democracy, particularly as pertain to choice, as pertain to participation, as pertain to rule of law and constitutionalism. And if we continue this way, democracy cannot grow and cannot be consolidated.
Mike?
I agree with Dr. Kari on his assessment. Internal democracy in political parties, for me, is really the foundation for every other thing. And if it is absent, then there is a problem. But it also goes back to the process of formation of political parties here. We talk about ideology, we talk about issues. Now most people say that, well, ideology is taking a back step and issues have arisen. So, but what are the issues that bring members of a particular political party in Nigeria together? The PDP, for instance, what are the issues? The APC, what are the issues? the other political parties, SDP. What are the real issues? So this, for me, really is the beginning of the problem. We must ensure that there is internal, democracy within the political parties. And here, Nigerians have a key role to play. Nigerians have a role to play in the sense that if you see that a particular political party has sidestepped internal democracy, let's vote them out. Or let's sympathize with another political party, because the parties themselves have clearly shown lack of capacity to enthrone internal democracy. So we are now able to watch, we're now able to see what goes on in political parties, and Nigerians must rise up in unison and say, enough of this. Political parties are the vehicles through which we have leaders in the public space. And if political parties themselves are not democratic, then what are we talking about, really? So the Nigerian people have a critical role to play. The courts have a role to play, but as a lawyer, I would say that the courts should really take a back role. Let the Nigerian people and the political parties themselves decide. We have done too much of this politics and democracy building in Nigeria through the courts. And a time has come when we must allow the courts to face some other issues and allow politicians, to come with a lot of maturity. The fight for office, the attraction to office is something that we really need to take deliberate steps to reduce. Why would people want to kill or people want to do anything and everything to get into office? There must be a reason, and we must find that reason and deal with it, so that the contestation is not the kind of thing that we're currently seeing.
Mike, I'm sure that scholars of the law of democracy will disagree with you when you say that the law should take a back seat, or the court should take a back seat.
It should be the last resort, really. That's what I mean.
And
not a back seat, but I mean the last resort.
The last resort. And some are already foreseeing a lot of litigation going forward, considering the chaos that has been referred to with regard to the conduct of the primary. I'm just wondering.
As a lawyer, Kingsley, I would say that's good for us.
Congratulations. Rhoda, I was just going to ask Professor Simbine this question to clarify this for members of the public. Because as part of seeking to understand what went on in the course of the primaries, the carrier, of course, referenced the sometimes conflicted instructions coming from, say, the national headquarters of a party and the organs of the party at the state level. Some were going somewhere. You saw all kinds of press conferences and statements being issued that this is what we are going to do. The headquarters will say this is what you will do. How does the ordinary voter make sense of all of this?
Well, the ordinary voter or member of the party may not be able to make too much sense. And for us as a commission, we allow them to take their time to resolve issues. That is why, for us, the conclusion is that only the recognized chairman and the secretary of the party can make a submission of list. That means that before that can happen, a certain degree of agreement would have been reached. And it is not one of them. It is actually both of them that should be making a submission on this. So, I quite agree with a lot of the things that both speakers have said. But they are the internal issues of the party. As a regulatory body, you allow them to manage these issues. But what we can see is that where they are not manageable, we're already seeing signs of the elections that will, or the issues, pre-election issues that will end up in courts, like Mike said about the judiciary, And it should not be so. If a priori things are done properly, before you decide to screen out some members, for instance, there should be agreement among party members, okay? And ultimately the decision-making organs of the party. These are the kinds of people that can or cannot, or last-minute joiners can enjoy or not enjoy. And it is these minimal differences that actually make one party different from another. A party can say that you join at 12 midnight, you can be the candidate at 1 a.m. Another party can say you must have joined 3 months to the time, okay? Or even in terms of the charges for nomination forms. You understand me? If you put a small fee, you can also have one with a large fee and allow people freedom to do. But these things should have been agreed well before the organization of the activity. Once it is agreed, we are to say, okay, this is the agreement or this is the agenda for the meeting, and we ensure that that as much as possible is being followed.
From the look of things, it would appear that the political parties would have been a lot happier if INEC had extended the deadline to say, look, instead of concluding your primaries by yesterday, we'll give you end of the month.
No, but the truth is that no matter how long you give, the time for this activity was 50 days.
Yeah, but it's only in the last 2 weeks that we started seeing
yes,
typical Nigerian last-minute
50 days.
runs.
But let me tell you, we started the program by saying that the commission announced a timetable and schedule of activity. It's there. It's online. It's in the open. You know, we did a press conference. This activity, it contains 14 activities. We're on number 3.
Defection had not started at that time. So
well, you know, these are some of the issues, you know. These are some of the issues. So the parties should have known that this activity will happen during this period and begin to put a notice around it. But we wait until last minute. But waiting for the last minute is also because you are in one party, you are not able to get what you want, you run to the other. But some of the small parties too are not, they don't have the organizational capacity. And they're actually just sitting down and waiting for losers at the other end to come and, this is what happened most of yesterday. Okay. That's the truth.
All right, gentlemen and lady.
Yeah, Mike was going to say
okay, Mike, go ahead.
She mentioned a very important issue that we really need to reflect upon, Kingsley, and this issue of the fees that are chargeable by political parties.
Actually, I was going to pop that question, but now that you're on it, go ahead.
You know, Kingsley, one of the greatest regrets of the delay in passing the amendments proposed to the Electoral Act is this problem of how much a political party can charge for nomination fees. You know, it's one of the proposed amendments, and if it had scaled through, I think what INEC had proposed was 10 million naira ceiling for the presidential and down the road. We have a not too young to run law now, no longer bill, that is absolutely worthless. Because a lot of the young people have not been able to meet up with these fees. So what have we really done? So by the time we're in 2023, one would expect that we would have, you know, an amended Electoral Act that can really take care of this issue. It is not an issue that one would normally want to see in an Electoral Act or in any law for that matter, because you expect that politicians and those who manage political parties will have this at the back of their mind. But we have a peculiar situation in Nigeria where an Electoral Act now has to dictate to political parties that you cannot go beyond a particular ceiling. And we really would love to see this come into effect, and we really would love to see INEC ensure that political parties stick by this rule. We have had provisions around campaign financing and all of that. I'm not quite sure how far INEC has done in ensuring that people meet up with the limitations that are placed by this law, but these are areas that we really need to pay attention to.
This issue of amount spent on elections, I think probably we'll start looking at it a lot of times after the elections. Okay. After a lot of times we tend to pay more attention to it after the elections when we see how much has actually been spent by each candidate on the electoral process.
Unfortunately, campaign finance regulations are head more in the breach than in the observance. But Rhoda, I was just going to say before we bring in Dr. Kari to comment on this, some persons are already suggesting that part of the bitterness you have heard some aspirants express arises from the fact that they have paid some of these exorbitant nomination fees, non-refundable, and they would appear to have been treated shabbily by their respective political parties. Dr. Kari.
Yeah, That's like double jeopardy, you know. But they're talking about campaign finance. I think the major problem is enforcement. If you remember in 2011, 2015, the provision is there in the Electoral Act that you shouldn't receive donations or contribution exceeding a certain amount. But particularly the big parties organize dinners, fundraising dinners, where billions were collected. In 2015, about 23 billion was collected by a particular...
Those were pledges.
Well,
we don't know whether the pledges were redeemed.
But the issue is, even the pledge was a violation of the Act. So it will really be very, very difficult to enforce this thing. More so, INEC has severally come out to say some of the responsibilities that has been vested on it, it cannot actually enforce them. And so that is why in the proposed West Panel recommendations, specific commissions or organs are supposed to be created who should be given such responsibilities. So I think if there should be some organ, perhaps separate from INEC, that will keep an eye on enforcement of such election financing. It can be done better.
That becomes a part of electoral offense.
Yes, but now INEC has the wondrous responsibility of conducting and organizing election. It's an odd job. It's like the issue of electoral offenses. So no matter how many times we incorporate such provisions in the Electoral Act or even in the Constitution, as long as there is no way of enforcing it, it will simply remain a provision.
You know, gentlemen, of course, vote buying is an electoral offense.
Of course.
And there were reports of vote buying during these primaries, just concluded primaries. One begins to wonder, are there no sanctions to this, Dr. Antonio? First.
A lot of the provisions either do not have sanctions, or the sanctions are very, you know, I mean, very mild. They don't, in fact, a party can decide to just breach the provision and to comfortably, you know, deal with whatever sanction you have. But much more importantly, many of the provisions are not verifiable. You just made a statement that vote buying could have occurred during some of these processes. How, where did you see this? It's difficult to prove to the extent of, to the extent that you would say you have sanctions to apply on it, you know. These are a bit, I mean, one of the parties did something the commission had decided should not be done during a particular election. Just yesterday, they announced the ban on the use of phones. Okay? But this is something that, by the way, that when the commission announced it, they were against it. Okay? But for them to do that, it meant that they knew that that kind of thing could happen. But whether it happened or not is for other people to say, you know. So the sanctions, if they are there, they are mild, but at the highest level, a lot of these things are not verifiable.
I wanted to speak
to this. Comment on the issue of vote buying. You know, Kingsley, I'll make a statement that sounds irresponsible, but I believe in it. Why are we having vote buying? It is because from 1998 to now, 1999 rather, there have been marginal improvements in the electoral process. And I'm sure INEC would like to hear this. We're having vote buying because it is now difficult to go and, you know, hijack electoral materials, go and sit down somewhere, thumbprint, and bring them back. That's no longer going to happen. It's now more difficult to go to a place, scare away people, you know, pull guns and all of that, and go and write results and bring them back. So politicians...
On the vote by
yes.
During these processes, the primaries.
No, I'm talking about the main election.
No.
Our
discussion. When there
discussion.
were reports during some of the states elections that were, you know, and then there were, you know, some videos circulating and all of that. It still looked like, you know, it was nothing, and you know there were no sanctions. Nothing could be done about it.
No, something can be done. Something
the
can.
The simple answer is that there will continue to be vote buying as long as there are willing sellers and buyers. And there are willing sellers, people who want to get to power at all costs, and they have the money to pay. And there are people who are willing, particularly delegates. Delegates are usually quarantined. Yes, the business part of the whatever is done covertly. You cannot even see them. So the issue of arrest, prosecution, and conviction is almost impossible. There's a way they reach out to them. In a particular state, it was alleged after the primaries that one of the candidates was going about giving every delegate 500,000 naira, and all you needed to do was to swear by the Quran. So he had agents who invite the people there, and they will swear by the Quran that I'll collect the money and I'll vote for you.
So it's not so
and there were no witnesses. So as long as there are willing buyers and sellers, it will be very, very difficult to stop vote buying.
Okay, well, Professor and gentlemen, I wanted to back up a bit, but we are going to take this short break now. I was going to return to the issue of the humongous fees charged by the political parties for nomination, and then having some of the aspirants being treated so shabbily. Some of them didn't know where the venue of the primaries, you know, where it was. It was after the fact that they were told, and then, of course, they were giving scores. What could be the relief for such persons? I mean, could there be an action because there's been failure of consideration? Of course, I'll come to Michael Saha, but that will be after this short break.
Makes a Nigerian mom powerful.
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again. That is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X. Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
All right, so welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, and our focus this morning we're talking about political party primaries. We still have all of our guests here in the studio, and just before we went on that break, Kingsley was actually talking about the humongous amount being paid for party forms to contest for these primaries, and of course the way at the end of the day these aspirants are being treated. But then before we actually get to that, I would like to take some of the comments coming in from our viewers via our Twitter handle at NTA GMN. Remember that you can be a part of this conversation. If you tweet at us, you have comments, you have questions, you have suggestions, send it to our Twitter handle at NTA GMN. The very first tweet we have is from Mike Anyako. He says, apart from the presidential primaries in all the parties and some governorship primaries, what we witness is much left to be desired. The reasons are not far-fetched, saying some politicians canvassing for elective offices are more concerned about their personal aggrandizement. We must change that.
This is coming from Dele Jack Solomon. In every election, there must be winners and losers. Others who contested but lost must work as a team with the winners towards the 2019 general elections. The recently concluded primaries should be a lesson for political parties that elections can be transparent, free, and fair.
Habila Kwar, as she says, the lesson learned from the whole process was that the era of imposition of candidates is gone, and Nigerians are to some extent ready to give room to those that are credible to take on leadership, with the exception of some states, though.
Lawan Mahmoud tweets, Governor Ambode of Lagos has shown maturity after conceding defeat to his challenger. Politicians should emulate him.
Dele Jack Solomon tweets, he says, the Nigerian political class may have learned that ensuring that the rule of law is respected is the way forward for sustainable democracy through the power of electorates, although the outcome of the primaries may not have been the desire of all.
This is coming from Jelly Jack Solomon again. Now that the primaries are over, the political parties in Nigeria have chosen their standard bearers and defined their major arguments, and the general election, of course, is well underway. Now, this also shapes the strategies and identities of the parties heading into the 2019 elections.
And this one is from Mike Anyako. He says, the bitter and true lesson is the absence of authentic register for members of political parties at various wards. More also, officers that were supposed to conduct the primaries would never come in time with electoral materials. At times, the venue of such elections are changed unnoticed.
And Victor Ohioswama tweets, says the just concluded primaries of the parties is a plus for internal democracy. Our guests appear to disagree with that. Now, it shows, according to him, that our democracy is deepening. However, giving automatic tickets to some incumbents by barring other aspirants from contesting is anti-democratic. Parties should find a better way around it. So those are some of the tweets that we're taking in the meantime. Mike Utsaha, I raised the point about what redress there might be for an aspirant who has paid a huge amount of money for a nomination form only to have what lawyers would call a failure of consideration.
So what most of the political parties do is, before they set out for these elections, they have appeals committees. So if you're dissatisfied with the process, you lodge a complaint. How well the committees or the appeals panels have done in the past is something else entirely. But I know for sure, I mean, I'm not familiar with the constitutions of the other political parties, but the APC constitution, for instance, allows you to proceed to the courts if you are dissatisfied with internal mechanisms for settling dispute. If I paid 22.5 million naira, for instance, for an election, and on the election day, I don't know where the election is taking place. I get there only to be told that results have been announced, and I have been allotted some votes and all of that. Kingsley, I think this is one situation where you must appeal or you must challenge the outcome. And if you're not satisfied with what the party has done, you proceed to court. We would like to see a situation, I would personally like to see a situation where a candidate or an aspirant would say, well, since I was not part of this process, can I have a refund? You know, let's have people asking, and let's hear what the courts will say. You know, that if you contest in an election, you fulfill all the conditions precedent, using your expression, and still you're not part of the process for no fault of yours, but just because people want to manipulate the process. Let's give the courts an opportunity to, you know, intervene and say what should be the outcome in terms of a refund. I'm one of those few who would say the courts should be minimally involved in the political process. But present situations like this, some of those situations that we really should allow the courts to also come in and check the growing irresponsibility that we see in the conduct of the affairs of political parties. So, I mean, those who have been excluded from the process, one, you have a chance to use the internal mechanisms of the political party, and then if you're not satisfied, you can take the matter up. I mean, once you have dealt with the condition precedent, which is you must exhaust internal processes, you can proceed to the next level.
Dr. Piano.
Yeah, I think the only addition is that the parties should try to eschew impunity. Everything has to do with impunity. It's the height of impunity for a political party to collect 22.5 million naira from a candidate and treats him very, very sharply, to the extent of either disqualifying him frivolously, as it happened in so many states, without any cogent reason, or for conducting the election in his absence, or for changing the rules of the game midway, or even after the election and doing it again. So all these points at impunity. And so the solution is for the political party to stop this act of impunity, to allow a level playing ground, and perhaps to look at the possibility of changing their own constitution so that if at any point in time an aspirant is dissatisfied with the process, he or she can collect their monies. But it will be double jeopardy for someone to pay humongous amount of money and then to be excluded or to be muzzled out.
Yeah, well, you use the figure 22.5 as a generic example.
Well, it's for APC.
The parties, no. The parties had varying figures that they charged, and there's the examples that we, of course, that you are talking about cut across all the political parties. Professor Simbine, tell us something more about the INEC timetable for the elections and deadlines. Of course, as we saw, the parties were in a rush to beat the deadline by yesterday. They have beat the deadline now. What next? The candidates have emerged. We now know the candidates for the political parties. I'm not sure how many of them have been tipped for the presidential. But what deadline is there, if any, for the parties, for the candidates to name their running mates? Because this is also part of the requirement.
Yes. Just to take us back a bit, March 9, 2017, we announced the dates for the elections.
2018.
2017, we announced the dates for the elections. January 9, 2018, we announced the timetable and schedule of activities. The difference is that you have a date for election, but there are several activities that will lead you to that date. So, in this timetable and schedule, like I said before, there are 14 activities. We just finished activity number 3. Primaries were between August 18 and October 7. The next step now from the 10th of October is submission of nominations. That is, after all the hue and cry within the parties, after exploring internal processes, and you made a point that we now know the candidates. The candidates can still change. If I know what people will call in the commission my babies, if I know them well, it's not what you got finally. Just like some activities, the announcements were done at the state level. By the time they got to Abuja, a different name.
That's right. Once it changes, there will also be litigation.
Yes.
That's
so
right.
but these nominations for presidential And National Assembly, we have October 10 to 18. And for the governorship and state houses of assembly, we have October 22 until November 2 for submission of nominations.
Is this supposed to include running mates?
Yes, yes, we hope that by then, because when you are submitting, you will submit along with wherever the offices require that there should be running mates.
So that's to say that for purpose of clarity, the political parties have between October the 10th and the 18th, presumably by close of work or by midnight on the 18th, to submit their nominations for the 2019 general elections. And for governorship, October the 22nd to November the 2nd. And the nomination would be the candidate and then the running mate for the particular. You raised the point about changes occurring, as you said, the ANEC babies, some of them, as you have also described, sometimes irresponsible, changing, delinquent rather, with the greatest respect to them, changing the names of the candidates. What is the limit of the powers of a political party? Yes, the power resides in it to alter the outcome of primaries validly conducted.
It is limitless, absolutely limited, but without consequences. It is a situation where you continue to find things like that. It is those ones that are likely to have future problems.
No, say it again. Are you saying that, look, Mike didn't contest an election, or I didn't contest an election, and the party decides to snap me up now to say, Kingsley, come and be our governorship candidate, and I pick Rhoda. Both of us will go and submit our... You're looking at me. You know, we didn't contest. I mean, can the political party do that and get away with it?
You see, the law says that the commission cannot reject a presentation of nomination. You cannot. It was like that before. It has been changed, and we are very comfortable with that. The party deal with your issues, make submission. The only thing, as much as possible, you look at the requirements for candidature. For the various offices, they have slight differences. So you cannot present an underage person. You shouldn't. But these are some of the things that can bring issues. So you make a submission, we cannot reject. But if at the end of the day, a member of the party, an aggrieved person, finds out something that is wrong, that is a basis for which that can. But a submission is made. We have to accept. So
even after you were part of the primaries that was conducted and you saw the process, and then there's another name coming to the commission from the party, there is nothing you can do about that? The
commission usually would have a monitoring report. We have, it includes the outcome of such a primary, you know. If that's a submission is made that is different from what we saw, we call their attention to it. If they're still comfortable with what they have done, it's fine. We accept that. But when an issue comes up and a request is made of the monitoring report, it is that monitoring report that we are going to give. So in a way, we are supporting the fact that the party did not do what it was supposed to do. It did not do the right thing, you know. But to say that, oh, you have to go back, you have to keep to what we said, I don't think that that is within the confines of our powers.
So, I mean, what she has said is substantially what occurs. But again, the Supreme Court has come in a number of times to say that the only basis upon which you can substitute a person who has been validly nominated by the political party and his or her name sent to INEC, the only basis upon which you can substitute that person and place in another person is where there are cogent and verifiable reasons. Either the person who has been nominated has withdrawn, has died, or for some reason or the other, the person is unable or unwilling to go ahead with the contest. And I mean, it's very clear. Cogent, this is the expression that has been used by the Supreme Court a number of times. Cogent and verifiable reasons. If they are cogent, they must also be verifiable, you know. So it's left for an aggrieved person that she mentioned to show that there is no cogent reason, or that there are cogent reasons, but there are no verifiable reasons, or that the two are absent, you know. So that's the safeguard to help, to assist INEC in saying, we will not accept this, we will not accept this, or we'll accept this.
Well, which of course.
There's also a period for substitution. After a party has presented, there's also a period for substitution, if the party wants to substitute. But in terms of verifiable or cogent reason, a situation, how do you deal with a situation where a party member has been convinced, you know, to step down or give? We have also had situations of, we have heard, and I think all of us have, situations where people who have contested certain primary offices now, actually have people, other people waiting for them who have taken forms for other offices in case they lose.
Okay,
you know,
also,
this exists.
yeah. It happened just yesterday evening in at least 2 states. At least 2 of the people who contested for the PDP presidential primaries are lost, went back to their states, and the people who had picked form, had been elected at the primaries, willingly, seemingly withdrew, and there was another contrived primaries, and those people now feel
another primaries.
Yes.
Another primaries.
So voluntary withdrawal is one of the conditions where a candidate can be substituted.
Well, again, for purposes of further clarifying the points raised by our 3 guests who are discussing this issue, let's take it stage by stage. Professor Simbine has already indicated the timelines for the submission of the names of the candidates. Once again, for the presidential, they have between the October the 10th and the 18th, and for governorship, between the 22nd of October and the 2nd of November. National Assembly, I'm not quite sure what the dates are, but assuming, just a minute, please, now that takes place, the parties, Mike Utsaha was talking about a situation where the parties decide to substitute the name of a candidate who has been forwarded to INEC. And the Supreme Court has said, and I agree with him on a number of occasions, that the reason for doing so mustn't be arbitrary. So that limits the powers of the political parties to alter that. It mustn't be, the reason must be cogent and verifiable. That's one leg of it. Now, the other leg of it, which is crucial, and that's the point I was going to say there, that the Supreme Court itself has also heard that, look, substitution must also be not just an outsider who is coming in. I mean, you saw what happened in the case of Yaya Bello and Faleke, following the death of Prince Audu, somebody who participated in the primaries. How does INEC take a look at this? I mean, if somebody is just coming out from the blues, do you... Well, of course, INEC is like a repository. Whatever comes to you, eventually you'll have to take out when the matter goes to court. What deadlines do parties have to substitute their candidates, and what do political parties need to provide when substituting such candidates?
Yes, the first dates I gave you relate to submission. You know, we can also have substitution within the party before the nomination is presented to INEC. That's true. Those are the kinds of things that Dr. Kiari was talking about happening yesterday. You quickly do that. The question to then ask is, did they have the commission present at their last minute activities, you know? Because, like I said, we go to these activities, we have a monitoring report. That is the one that is coming to the commission. Anything done in emergency like that can be problematic, okay? Especially if other people within the party raise issues. So officially, there's also a period after the party has submitted to INEC. There's a period in which the party, about a week or so, which is much later, for substitution of these kinds of submitted names, you know, names that have already been officially submitted can be substituted. There's a period for that, you know. That can happen.
You know, you were saying, are there any guidelines as to how, you know, does INEC have any guideline as to how this substitution is done?
Well, yeah, the guidelines, of course, will derive, I believe, I just asked that question rhetorically, will derive from some of the ratio of the decisions of the Supreme Court. If a candidate whose name has been submitted, unfortunately, passes away, I mean, that's one thing for you to worry about. If, unfortunately, I mean, something happens, the candidate runs amok, runs mad, and, you know, and there's evidence to that effect, I mean, you can make that substitution. But very quickly, because again, we're getting pressed for time, unfortunately. Gentlemen, that's Kari and Usaha. Before the parties began their primaries, and indeed, for the past 3 or 4 years, Good Morning Nigeria has focused on aspects of youth participation in politics and women's participation in politics, not just having them function at the periphery. But it would appear that the indications coming out from most of the political parties that these two critical groups have been somewhat excluded. What does that tell us?
Well, I think that is in respect of the major political parties. Now we have 91 parties. I know for certain that about 6 or 7 of the presidential candidates of the less fancied parties actually are youth. So perhaps the existence of so many parties is an opportunity for the youth, and maybe those who are not so wealthy, to also contest. But the problem is, in the major political parties, such categories, youth, women, and the people with disabilities are still substantially excluded for so many reasons, either on account of fees or the political space somehow has excluded them and so on, which is actually very bad. And it is expected in this part of the world that perhaps only those who contest on the platform of the major parties stand a very good chance of making it. So up to now, a lot needs to be done as far as the major political parties are concerned, particularly in embracing these very special social categories.
I think a lot is already being done, but I totally agree with Dr. Kari when he says a lot more needs to be done. I have been involved in elections in this country since 2003. And Kingsley, I have not seen the kind of interest shown by young people in the 2015 elections. And I think it is even rising a lot higher. So one would expect that as we go into another election cycle, that interest in participating in the political process will even go sky high. And then we would see more and more young people even aspire for office, you know, particularly in what he refers to as the mainstream political parties, you know. So the interest is there, the consciousness is there, and we would like to see it even the more. One of your tweets or your Twitter said something about in an election, a winner and a loser must emerge. That is true. But we want someone who has lost an election to know that, well, this was a fair process. This was a credible process. I lost because I had to lose. So it's easy for me to pick up the phone and call Rhoda and say, I congratulate you, you know. So we must bring back credibility into the electoral process. And this is my challenge to the managers of political parties. Let us have a process where people believe that they have fairly lost and they have been given the opportunity to participate.
In one sense, the primaries tend to show that the Godfather is alive.
Yeah, it's true. Particularly in the major political parties. The Godfathers interfered, and they interfered brazenly with all sense of impunity. They are anointed candidates. The level playing ground, the playing ground was not level. People were excluded directly and indirectly, and this is very, very bad for democracy.
Dr. Antonio, let's get your final thoughts.
Well, just to say that I know that now that most of the processes have been concluded, there's a temptation to start the campaigns. If you look at the schedule of activities, there is also a date by which campaigns can start. For the Presidential and National Assembly, we have November the 18th, and for the governorship and houses of assembly, we have the 1st of December. So while it's one of the issues that may be difficult to actually sanction, it is important that parties try to keep to the rules of the game. But in summary, the truth and long and short is that it's difficult and you cannot give what you don't have. Undemocratic parties cannot propose to want to practice or deliver democracy to the generality of the people.
All right, Professor Simbida, thank you very much. The issue you just raised now with regard to the schedules for campaigning, that point is noted, but I recall also on Good Morning Nigeria raising that point with the then chairman of INEC, that's Professor Jega. You already have pseudo campaigns ongoing. So what do you do? Yeah. Well, you have billboards, you have posters. These are also all forms of campaigns. The political parties, their logos are all there. None of them has denied that. I don't know the utility of that provision with regard to having a formal date set for campaigns. If a party has a pocket deep enough and it doesn't violate extant provisions with regard to campaign financing will also relate to how much you spend on advertising. Then, of course, you get rid of that particular provision, restricting campaigns to just a few days. You already have pseudo campaigns all over the place. What do you do? Tear down the billboards?
Even just at yesterday's, there are already jingles.
Absolutely, jingles. We're going to hear some of them.
These
Danceable tunes that we're going to hear.
Very fluid.
Yes.
The parties can tell you that the campaigns were for the purposes of primaries. So we are calling attention to this issue. Now that primaries are over, try to reduce, restrict them, and stay with that. But part of the consequence of early campaign is that there's no way you will not flout the laws on campaign finance. If you start early, you will spend more.
All right, well, that's the point to worry about. Is on that note, we'd like to thank all our guests who have been with us in the studios this morning. Mike Saha, legal practitioner and public affairs analyst. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Also, we have had the pleasure of having Dr. Abubakar Kari, University of Abuja, a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program this morning. And our appreciation also to Professor Anthony Okosi Simbine. She's the National Commissioner North Central, that's in charge of Kaduna, Niger, Plateau, and the FCT, and also in charge of election and political party monitoring. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much.
All right, time now for us to take our sports. As Nigeria's Super Eagles open camp today in Uyo ahead of Saturday's AFCON first leg qualifiers against Libya and Kano Pillars. Of course, Kano Pillars